Russian agents in a now proven hoax conspiracy theory. Communists often attempt to mirror their own criminal actions onto others. What's very interesting is you're saying that Admiral Lyons, who's now passed away, and General Mcinerney, our honored guest tonight, were on a terrestrial radio show. And what's the name of the gentleman? I want to give him credit. What's his name?
Dave Janda, Dr. Dave Janda.
So he, in March of 2017, interviews them, and they break the news on terrestrial radio for the first time, I'm guessing, about the hammer. The next day, you have Stoke and Page texting about this, and then Comey announces Russiagate, which I'm guessing then all of that was a huge attempt at throwing up dust and dirt and a distraction from what had just come out, the hammer, which would mean the end of all of them and probably jail time. If not, if we follow the law, it could be worse than that. Are you telling me at the end of the day, the Russia hoax wasn't what all of us think it was, just a political thing? It was more than that. It was a cover to cover the hammer being exposed on that radio show by my guest and your friend General Mcinerney and the late Admiral Lyons. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying, and that is why the title of our book, we quote Admiral Lyons' last words to General Mcinerney, or his conversation that night, and he said, the hammer is the key to the coup. And we believe that it is. Because you have to understand, they're not just spying on people. They didn't just spy on Donald Trump a zillion times, as we quote the whistleblower tapes. They were taking our freedom. They were taking America. There would be no real, if you have judges that are under surveillance, and as Dennis Montgomery told, they were under surveillance for the purpose of blackmail and leverage.
Let's talk, General Mcinerney, let's talk about General Flynn. Why did they go after General Flynn, do you think?
Well, before we do that, Brandon, let me just say, I think it's extremely important that President Trump be aware of the program of Hammer and Scorecard. And I don't know if he is or not. Mary and I, again, as I say, it was a week ago tonight that Mary called me and let me know that it was going to be used in the election on the 3rd of November. But it's extremely important that for your case on Phil Haney, that Dennis Montgomery have the appropriate security and the appropriate support to examine and help examine what is being done on his system that he wrote the code for.
So did I just hear you say that we, the American people, should do our best to bring to the attention of the White House the hammer and have the security around Mr. Montgomery to use the software he built to analyze just what happened during an election? Is that what the American people need to demand? The right team and staff and protection for Mr. Montgomery to actually use his own software to do the analysis?
Absolutely. We must protect that asset. And the fact is it's extremely important. The president's got a lot of things going on, and he should do that. Now, I'll answer the question on General Flynn. The reason they took General Flynn out was, and I have problems with the vice president, the way he did that and the way they did it, but they cleverly, as Comey admits, he sent in Stroke and one other guy, and they interviewed him. And then they tipped off the CNN people. The CNN people asked Vice President, had General Flynn come to an agreement or talked about changing the economic sanctions on the Russians or something like that. And he said no. And the fact was is he hadn't, but the FBI said that he had. Well, the reason they wanted to get rid of Flynn, you remember Flynn was approached by the president, the vice president, and this chief of staff, Reince Priebus, and asked him for his resignation. What can you do? If knowing what he knows now, he should have said, listen to the tapes. I didn't do that. And that's all he should have said, and said, I'm not resigning, and you listen to the tapes, and then ask me this question. But they entrapped the president and the vice president and the chief of staff. The Democrats did, and the FBI and Comey. And now you've got a lawyer, and the reason they did, because General Flynn would know exactly when this was broken, everything the way it was done. The way they laid it in in the United Kingdom with the equivalent of their NSA, it's called GCHQ, Government Communications Headquarters. It's located up at Cheltenham. And they provided the information to the CIA that said that there were communications going on. It was false information, but they provided it saying that. Then they had that Australian ambassador and some other people to do some corroborating. Comes into the FBI, Brennan just forwards it over to the FBI, and they go through their kabuki and their falsifications and what they were doing, which we know after 3 years of listening to Mueller's report and his pathetic performance. So they set this up. That has been erased. But America must understand, if they would do that against an incoming president and a sitting president, and then impeach him, knowing that he was not going to be impeached because he had a Republican Senate, what would they do about influencing the election? They would use hammer and scorecard. There's just no doubt about it. But we've got to prove that to the American people. And we've got to examine and do the forensics on the voting going in the battleground states. Bernie Carrick put out certain information. But that information must be made to the American public, or otherwise every future election will be, as I said earlier, will be dominated by cyber warfare, and it'll never change. We will have a totalitarian government.
Well, listen to this.
It's extremely important.
Listen to this.